Hi guys, Michelle Visser, author, host of the Simple Doesn't Mean Easy podcast, creator of Dehydrating Academy, and I am a gardener and I grow a whole lot of our food and I dehydrate most of it because it's my absolute favorite way to preserve food. So from my many tomatoes to my peppers to my kale to the green beans to the herbs, so many herbs from mint, actually 4 varieties of mint this year, to 2 different varieties of basil this year, to parsley, to cilantro, to lemon balm. The list goes on. All of those things I dehydrate. So I'm sharing about that pretty often, especially over on Instagram. And people will often ask me, what dehydrator should I get? And of course, that's not a really simple answer because all of us are different. We all have different needs when it comes to a dehydrator, and different things we want out of our machine. So I thought today, instead of making a video about this is what dehydrator you should buy, I thought I would show you the 2 that I really like and break down the differences between them and break down what functions and features you should be looking at when you're comparing dehydrators and trying to choose one. So come join me in my kitchen. I've gotten down my 2 dehydrators and I will show you what I got. Before we go any further though, please take a quick second, if you haven't already, to subscribe to this channel, give this video a thumbs up, and leave a comment. Let me know what you think. All of those things make a huge difference to small content creators like you as we try, like you, like me, as we try to share with you lots more information and encouragement. Okay, I think I said I've gotten down my 2 dehydrators. I meant to say I've broken down my 2 dehydrators, and I actually had to wipe them all off. They are both in heavy use this time of year. It is end of summer. The garden is giving me lots of food that I need to get put away. So they both are typically running pretty much nonstop, honestly. And I usually have them plugged in here on our table because then I have room to put out the trays and fill them and clean them out. But other times of the year, like throughout the summer, when I want to be hydrating herbs all summer long, I will just get out one dehydrator, and this is the one that I'll grab. And it fits really nicely on my kitchen counter in a certain spot that I always keep it. And it just has a really nice footprint, taking up not a lot of space for all the trays that it can fill. So anyway, they've been in heavy use, and I actually just got them all broken down and cleaned up and all the pieces here so that I could show you these 2 units and how they differ. I went through 2 different units over the course of probably about 2 decades, honestly. And after the first one that was such a flop, I went probably 10 or 15 years without even trying dehydrating again. Looking back, after I've learned what I have about these units, I realized it was just a really bad machine that I had. It was a cheap model. It was all I could afford. It didn't work right. The way the air was forced through was not effective, and my results were always horrible. And then the second unit that I got, I thought it was a good purchase because it was, I think it was called 4-in-1, or maybe it was 5-in-1. And I also liked that it had stainless steel trays. My first unit was a plastic round one with the air just coming up through the middle. The second one had the stainless steel trays, and I liked that, oh, I can use it for other things too. It's an air fryer. It can cook a roast or do a rotisserie chicken. I forget what all it could do. Well, I should have known better because I don't use those other functions. Whenever gadgets like that usually are not for me. I usually want a very useful appliance that I'm using often, or it's not worth having. Well, the problem with that unit was mainly it took up a lot of space on my kitchen counter to be there all the time, because if I was going to use it as those other things I wanted it out, it was just too bulky. And the trays inside that you did your dehydrating on were so small. Like compared to these trays that go in my Tribest They were probably just a little more than half this size, and there were only 4 of them. So whenever I wanted to dehydrate anything, it was never enough room, and it was very frustrating because you bring your stuff in from the garden and it's piled up laying around and it gets wilted or too ripe or old before you can get through it all. It was just not something that worked. The footprint of it was too big and the trays were way too small. So I pretty much gave up on dehydrating because of my experiences with those 2. But on top of that, the unit, that second unit, did give me decent results. So then my problem was I didn't know what to do with the food. I had it sitting around for years in jars or containers. I'm like, well, it's kind of cool that I dehydrated this, but I don't know what to do with it. So fast forward a few more years, and I realized I needed to figure this out because I didn't like any other method of preserving food. I needed to figure out dehydrating, how to do it correctly, and how to get good results, and how to use my final products. Man, when I invested some time into this, I did some research, I really worked through trying different things. It was so worth it. It's amazing what you can do with a dehydrator, guys. Amazing. Check out the description for my Dehydrating Academy. It'll blow your mind. And I'm going to put a special exclusive code in the description for anybody who has checked out this video. You can get a really sweet offer on Dehydrating Academy and become an expert. It's such a great way to preserve your food. It preserves 97% on average of your nutrients. When I was canning those tomatoes, I was losing 60 to 80% of the nutrients. But now, when I dehydrate my tomatoes and turn them into a powder that I then rehydrate into sauce, it's really, really an easy process, so much easier than canning. And I pretty much have all the nutrients that were in that tomato when I picked it from my garden. It's exciting, but I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me know if you would like a video explaining and showing you how I do that with tomatoes. It's really so fun. Okay, now let's look at these dehydrators. So essentially, I believe there are 4 factors that you should look at really closely when you're choosing what kind of dehydrator, what brand, what price point you're going to purchase. So we're going to break down those 4 things in this video. There's more thoughts, and certainly it doesn't cover everything. And there's a lot more I could tell you about these specific models if you are considering one of these exact dehydrators. So read the description for all that, for lots more in-depth information. But let's talk about those 4 things. 1, consider the footprint. This one and this one, which I can put it right here, you can tell, are pretty much the same footprint. The Tribest is about 1 inch deeper than this one is, I think it's, yeah, Liquip. Do you say that, Liquip? Liquip. That one. It's from Nutrimill, so maybe that's what I'm going to call it, the Nutrimill one. So this one's from Tribest, this one's from Nutrimill. Pretty much the same footprint, and the amount. So when you look at the footprint, then you want to look at how much can you dehydrate in it. This one holds 11 trays, and this one actually, they really should tell you a limit, and I don't think it says it anywhere. I'm sure once you have a certain number of trays, you've maxed out the ability of this machine, but I know you can get add-on trays. Now, the machine itself comes with, put these together, this many. I'll show you these in a second. Okay, so this is what the machine comes with. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So it has 6 levels versus the 11 trays in the Tribest. But these trays, because you can fill up all the way to the very edge, even though they have a center hole that you're not able to use because the air is circulating through that hole, it's still, 1 tray of this holds more than a tray in the Tribest. We can just lay it like this and you can see. So in the end, I don't know the exact capacity, but I have filled them both at the same time with the same foods. And I have come to the conclusion that the standard levels that you get with this one and the 11 trays in the Tribest hold the same amount. Honestly, the Tribest probably holds a little bit more because I usually don't use the 11th tray because Tribest, oh, it's still wet from me washing it. Tribest has this tray that goes on the bottom. So you don't have to use this. If you want to maximize the space and fill it up and you have just a little bit extra food that you can't fit in, you can take this tray out and you can put your 11th hydrating tray right there on the bottom. There's still a space underneath of it and the air is still circulating wonderfully, so you can use all the way to the very bottom. It's just kind of nice having this tray in there because it's collecting any drips or any leaves that are coming off of your herbs or whatever. It's a little easier to pull that out and clean it up, but it's not necessary. So you can use all 11 trays in there. If you're using all 11 in here, I feel like it's probably a little bit more capacity than the Quip from Nutrimill, but they're very similar. Okay, so that's one thing you want to consider. How much room is it going to take up? Is this something I'm going to be leaving on my kitchen counter or on my kitchen table for months on end? And let's measure out, where I'm going to want to sit it. Will it fit there? And then after you decide, okay, I can fit it, the footprint is good, make sure the capacity is going to be enough for what you're going to be dehydrating. For a while, I did feel like the Tribest was enough for me. And then Nutrimill asked if they could send me this so that I could give an honest review to you guys, and I wasn't sure I would like it, and I wasn't even sure I needed it, but once I had it, like I said, I'm using them both almost nonstop during harvest season, so it is actually kind of nice having the second one. But I have to say, I'm surprised at how much I do like it. It's definitely not as bells and whistles as the Tribest, and it definitely is not as efficient or as thorough of doing a really great job as the Tribest. But given the price point, it is amazing. I was shocked at what an amazing job it did at the price point that it's at. So that's another factor to consider, is obviously the price. Don't make the mistake I did and go with the cheapest one because it's what you can afford. And I'll get to why in a second. But if you can find something like this one that's a good price point that actually works well, read the reviews and check in on it, whatever one you're looking at. This one, I can tell you, definitely works well. Then, that's something you have to consider. The Tribest is a higher price point, and maybe down the road you'll be able to upgrade and be like me and have two that you're using in the busy months, and that's not a bad thing. But the next point is, how does it heat? How does the fan run? What is the motor in it? How is it all working? Because if you go with those cheap models that I tried, the motor is a very inefficient motor, and it's sending all of the air right through the center. Nothing ever gets to the edges correctly. It's not filtering the air correctly, and it just doesn't do a good job, ever, if it's a cheap model. This intrigues me because this one has a hybrid mechanism. It's a different style than you're going to find in those typical ones that have the center opening, because this one has another option of how it filters the air, and it gets the air onto every level. That's the other problem with the really cheap ones, is that you have to continually be changing out your levels. So you have to come in and go, okay, the bottom one will move to the top, and we'll put this back down like this. And you have to be checking them often because the ones down here could easily get too dry, too brittle, too burnt. So you have to always be monitoring it. This one, that is not the case. This one, because of this hybrid mechanism, it gets the same amount of air to every level, and it gets the air to the edges. So, like I said, I wouldn't say it does as great a job as the Tribest. With the Tribest, I don't monitor it at all, and I have great results every time. With the Nutrimill, it depends on what you're dehydrating. Kale, never any trouble. Every time it turns out wonderfully. But tomatoes, if you're doing tomato slices, That I've struggled with because the circulation isn't quite as good in some of the tomatoes because they're more sensitive and they're sliced really thin. Some will get burnt and some not done on the same tray. So it depends on what you're dehydrating. And that's also because I'm used to not monitoring it with this. So I don't monitor it. I just turn it on and come back when it's done. If you have the time, if you're going to be around and you can always be monitoring it, there's probably never a reason this one will not be sufficient for you, except for fruit leathers. Let me show you. This is what they give you to make your fruit leathers. I'm sure you can get extra ones. I'm sure you could put them on every tray. But even so, I feel like that's just not going to be a lot of leathers. And I'm not crazy about this design. I haven't used it, so I can't really give you an honest critique of it. But I don't have a need to use it because it's just those two little trays. And I make my leathers on this. Like I said, I think I'll do another video. Definitely, if you guys let me know you're interested, showing you how I use these on these trays to make my fruit leathers and my tomato leather. So footprint and how much it can hold, how the air circulates, what the price point is. I guess maybe that's it. And then materials was the last thing I was going to talk about. You'll find very different materials in the different dehydrators that you look at. This one is a high grade food safe plastic, but you know, the next level up from that is going to of course be stainless steel, completely all stainless steel. I personally have a strong preference for this and I was willing to invest a lot more because I really did want this option. But here I am this year using both of them all the time, so take that for what it's worth. And I do like the materials of how you do your fruit leathers, or anything that's going to be like really thin and potentially stick too much to this. You want to use your add-on sheet, and I really like these. They're so easy to clean, they are so easy to use, and when something has kind of started to spill over onto your stainless steel here, it's so easy to just pull it right off and disassemble your food from your tray. Not as easy with this, I will definitely say. I do not like this as much for one thing. Because of the way the air is circulating, they cannot put a solid sheet on here, which is why they have to use these, and you still have the air circulating around them if you're doing some kind of a solid sheet. But I also am not crazy about getting this out. I guess it's because it's down, you know, in the tray maybe. If anything does get sticky or stuck to the sides, this can be a bear. I mean, it's kind of hard even right now to get your finger under there and get that all pulled up. But depending on what you're dehydrating, you might not even need to use this. It really depends on how small your food gets when it's done. Like green beans will fall through this by the time they're done because they're so little. So this is good to put underneath of them to catch them, or when you pick up your tray, you suddenly have a dozen green beans on the floor. And then the last thing I wanted to show you about this model is they do give you these little guys. Never use them. I have thrown them. You can put 4 of these on the deeper tray. By the way, I don't know if you noticed, there are 2 depths of trays. I'm having trouble telling. Yeah, this is the thinner and this is the deeper, which is nice if you're doing something larger. Like I did whole green peppers the other day. Banana peppers, not full peppers. They would not fit on here, but banana peppers fit nicely on here. I didn't have to slice them or cut them. I could just put the banana peppers on here. So the depth is nice depending on what you're using it for. But anyway, you can put these on your deeper trays, and supposedly you can culture your yogurt that way. But that's a really great benefit to think about if you do want to invest in the other style of unit. Instead of the trays like this, if you have the whole open compartment like this, you can put your jars of yogurt. You could probably fit, I bet you could fit 6-quart jars in there. Maybe I should try it. And culture it all at once in here in the jar. So that's a really nice benefit to this style. Also, while that's nice that you have 2 depths, here you can go as deep as you want. You know, if you did want to try and dehydrate whole full-size peppers. I don't know why you'd want to. You could just put a couple trays in there and have plenty of room. Or maybe if you wanted to do pint jars of yogurt, maybe you could fit a dozen or more in there. So you have more variety with the size of what you're dehydrating with this. Whistles definitely are more, which could be bad or it could be good. That you can set this to run a certain amount of time at a certain temperature and then increase the temperature at a certain amount of time for a certain length. And there's just more options that you have. Now with this one, you could say it's actually kind of nice that it's simple. You literally hit the power button and tell it which one is which. How long, you just turn the knob and you tell it the temperature by turning the knob. This one can drive me a little batty when it starts at 95 and you want to get it up to 160 if you're doing, I did marshmallows the other day, and it takes a while and you're pushing, and it's beeping, 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 beeping. So sometimes simple is nice, right? Okay, I think that's everything I wanted to show you about these two units. So those are the points that I would strongly encourage you to consider when you're trying to decide what dehydrator is best for your family. And both of these are ones I would definitely recommend. I will link to both of these in the description. Don't forget about that special discount code just for you guys for Dehydrating Academy. And also there's more details in depth about these units in an article that's linked in the description. Thanks for watching, guys.